Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I am your host, Randi-lee. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking to Bruce Solheim. If you have not already, hit that like and subscribe button. Do it right now. I've got Bruce Solheim here with me. Hi, Bruce.
Hello, Randi-lee. Good to see you.
You too. So how are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm doing
Excellent.
okay.
And you emailed me earlier and you're like, we still on for 6:45 PST. And I'm like, oh, that'd be so early. I'm in Eastern, so 6:45. No, thank you.
I'm usually up pretty early. Today I got up a little later. We had a busy day yesterday, but it was a fun day. But so
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was up. I got up at like 6:30 to let my dogs out and have breakfast and stuff. But like to be ready and energized, that's just no. It's no. So tell us a little bit about who Bruce is.
Well, I am from Seattle, and my parents were from Norway. They came over after the Second World War. They immigrated in 1948 to Seattle. And my dad was a fisherman and a carpenter. And my mom was a maid. And they worked themselves up to the middle class. And I grew up in a really nice middle class suburb north of Seattle. Well, it's kind of country-like when I was little, and now it's suburb, but anyway. I joined the Army and served 6 years in the U.S. Army.
Oh, wow.
And I was a helicopter pilot.
Oh, cool.
So in the 82nd Airborne Division, but I never went to war. So I'm really lucky. I never had to go to war because I'm a very sensitive person. That probably wouldn't have worked out too well for me. So
okay, if you're a sensitive person, why join the Army?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I first joined, I didn't go right away to flight school. I was an enlisted person, like the lowest rank, and I dropped out of the University of Washington, and I got into an argument with my dad, and I jumped out of his moving truck and ran into the woods and waited for him to leave. And then I walked 5 miles to the what I thought was the Navy recruiting station, because I said, I'm just going to get out of here. I'm not doing my parents any good, not doing myself any good.
Yeah.
And so I walked 5 or 6 miles, whatever it was, and the Navy wasn't there anymore, but the Army was there. So I said, what the heck, I'll just join the Army. So that's how random it was.
Wow.
My decision. So it wasn't really, it wasn't thought out very well.
Wow. So, okay.
Yeah.
I was just very curious there. So yeah, it's a very good thing that you didn't end up going to war. I mean, it's not a good thing when anyone has to go. So you were very lucky that way.
And this all happened on Halloween, 1978. So it was a very eventful Halloween.
I guess so. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. So you joined the Army, you're a helicopter pilot, and then keep going with your story now.
Yeah, and then I got out, and I went to work at Boeing. So I was a defense contractor, utilized that military experience, and worked on the B-1 bomber project. I had a secret and a top secret clearance. And then I worked a little bit on the commercial side of Boeing on the 747 program. And then meanwhile, I was taking classes and getting my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, and then had 2 kids along the way, 2 boys. And then I decided to go to graduate school at Bowling Green State University and get my PhD in history. And
why history?
Well, because my dad was a storyteller, and I love telling stories. And I've been writing since I was a little kid, so I figured that's the best discipline for me. And I had some mentors, some history teachers that were really, really good. Really good storytellers.
Okay.
There's one in particular. He's a World War II veteran, and he was a Army historian. So he wrote the history of the Italian campaign, and he met all the famous generals. And anyway, just the stories were so great. So I said, okay, my dad's a storyteller. There's a tradition, and I really liked my history mentor. So I decided to go into history, and I really enjoy it because I weave personal stories into my, lectures or discussions with my students still. So
That's so cool then.
yeah, so I get to do exactly what I love, and I get to write because historians, usually like to write. So it's a good profession for that.
Yeah.
And now I've got 4 children. I got 2 grandsons, and I've been teaching at Citrus College here in Southern California for 25 years.
Wow.
I was a Fulbright scholar in 2003 in northern Norway. So I'm very close to my roots in Norway. I speak and write and read Norwegian, and because I grew up with both languages. Actually, Norwegian was my first language until I went to school. So
okay.
like a lot of immigrant children.
Yeah.
So, and then in 2016, I was writing standard kind of history books, political science and history, academic type books. And then in 2016, a dear friend of mine who's also Norwegian American from Seattle, but he was an actor, so he chose a different path. Very, very colorful guy. He died suddenly, sadly, in 2016. And then a month after he died, I had a visit from him, a spiritual visit. And this opens up something that I had always kept hidden, my paranormal life. I've had since I was 4 years old. My mom was very psychic too, and she was kind of private about it as well. But he came to me and said, "It's time to start writing about the paranormal. Tell your stories." And I was arguing with him, and here he is, a ghost, a spirit. And I'm saying, I can't, because I might lose my job. They're going to think I'm nuts if I start telling all the weird stories that have happened to me. And he said, no. He said, the time is right. And he even gave me the title of the book. He said, you should call it Timeless, because where I am, there is no future, there's no past. It's all just happening all at the same time right now. And I said, oh, that's fascinating. Tell me more. And, he did. And so I started writing. I had collected a lot of these stories, but hadn't published them or anything. And then I just started collecting them. It turned into a trilogy of books, timeless books.
Okay.
And then also a standalone book on a character named Anzar, who's a mystic alien, or he's a ancient alien mystic, as he likes to call himself.
Okay.
So it went from standard academic to, off into the paranormal. And most everybody went along for the ride with me. There's a couple of colleagues who think I'm a little spacey, but the rest of them actually come to me, like I have they can share their secret with me. So they'll come to me and say, I've seen ghosts. Is that okay that I've seen? Oh, yeah, it's cool that you've seen ghosts. So I'm kind of a confidant, kind of a safe person to talk to. And the college didn't fire me. They allow me to teach. They have allowed me to teach a paranormal history course.
Oh.
So it was totally what Gene said. He said, don't worry about it at all. The time is right. And the time is right. I mean, there's more stuff coming out on aliens, UFOs, the paranormal. It's just become much more, I'm not going to say mainstream, but it's more acceptable to a broader audience.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
So how does the paranormal fit in with mental health?
Well, it fits in perfectly. And I'll share a funny story with you. I'm a disabled veteran. So I went to the VA, the Veterans Administration Hospital, to get signed up for all my medical care. And they put me through they sent me to the not the psychiatric unit, but the mental health unit, because that's a standard thing. Because if you have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, they want you to, go through this intake.
Yeah.
So they had this form that I was filling out, and the nurse was asking me questions, and she said, do you hear voices from people who aren't there? And do you see people who nobody else can see? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, I'm not going to check yes on your form, but I will tell you personally, yes, I do, because I'm very psychic, and I'm a medium. I can see and hear people who have passed on. That's not unusual for me. And she looked at me like, I can't believe you're telling me this, but okay. And then, I put no on the form because there's always that idea that, that's a classic, definition for somebody who has, schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And so there's a fine line. And actually, I was talking to a psychiatrist, and I said, it wasn't a military psychiatrist, it was another, a civilian one. And I said, is it possible that people who are, schizophrenic or delusional, is it possible that they're extremely psychic but don't know how to handle it? That they just can't get their foot back in this world? They see all this stuff. And he said, he told me, he looked at me and he said, that's a very frightening thought. I guess it had never occurred to him, because he was very much in that world of, everything is science can tell us everything right now, and there's nothing more. There's no ghosts. It's all whatever.
Yeah.
And he looked frightened when I said that. Yeah. And I said, these poor souls, maybe they just need some grounding, and once they figure out, hey, that is real. You're not crazy. It's real. And also this is real. One doesn't cancel out the other. And well, there's more pathology to it, obviously, than that. People who've been institutionalized and, that kind of stuff. But anyway, so it does tie in that way. And in terms of, things like depression or if you're very insightful, intuitive, or psychic, it can sometimes lead to depression because, for instance, going to a party, before I learned how to manage my ability to connect with all this, the other worlds or whatever, I would go to a party and I could hear like what people, not so much what they were thinking, but what their intentions were. And it was very disturbing. You walk in there, it's just you're hearing the noise, the people talking, but then you also hear the subtext. And it's that subtext that's very disturbing. So I don't want to know what your intentions are. I don't want to talk to you. And so I end up in the corner talking to one person, trying to drown out all this other information. And I can see where that, it can be kind of isolating and lead to depression, and which it did for me. And in addition to the trauma that I got in the military, serving in the military.
So let's talk about those two things, the PTSD and the depression. So after the military, you said you had to talk to one of their psychiatrists there. What's the difference between is there a difference between a military psychiatrist and the psychiatrist that you saw outside of that?
It really depends. Some military mental health professionals or VA. If you're talking about military and then there's VA, the military active duty, that's very different animal than the people in the VA who are oftentimes civilians working for the government, that type of thing. Okay. But if you want to talk, I will differentiate that way and say that the military psychiatrists are under orders to keep you resilient and to keep you fighting. So they're not going to go off into, oh, well, we think you have PTSD. It's like, just get over it, get back on the job, and I did, talk to a few people when I was in the Army, and it was always that kind of thing. Like you're trying to shirk your duty, or you're trying to, they suspect that you're faking, or whatever. Yeah. So they have that kind of mindset, because that's what they just want to make sure everybody's ready to fight constantly, so they can't allow for that.
Their standpoint,
it makes sense. It does make sense. Yeah.
Because if you constantly went, oh yeah, you have PTSD now, so you get to go home or whatever, and you get to go home, because there's some very traumatic things that I can imagine they see, or you would have seen had you been to war or whatever. And there wouldn't be a supply of people to fill those positions.
Exactly. I mean, when you think about it, war is crazy anyway. I mean, it's just, I don't like to use the word crazy, but it's just madness. There's nothing that makes any sense in it when you think about it. As Lyndon Johnson said during the Vietnam War, he didn't say a lot of good things, but he did say this. He said, war is killing a man you don't even know well enough to hate. And it's that kind of insight that really makes you think, and I tell my students this when we talk about any war. I say, you have to be able to dehumanize the enemy in order to kill them, because unless you're like a psychopath or a sociopath that kills without thinking, all of us, 99% of us, luckily, or more, don't believe that. We have sympathy and empathy. And so in order to get to that point that you can do that, you have to like go blank, and you have to numb yourself.
Yeah.
And that comes back to haunt you in relationships and everything else, because if you numb yourself to the horror that you're experiencing, you're also numbing yourself to love and to compassion for yourself and for others, and you just become like this zombie. And that's fine. In a combat zone, you need that. You can't be a touchy-feely person with people shooting at you. That you're not going to survive.
Yeah.
Or worse yet, the guy next to you is not going to survive, and then you got to live with the fact that you didn't. So there's so it's once you get out that you realize that the conditioning that you've gone through, and then you got to deconstruct it, and it takes a lot of therapy. And I've worked with veterans. I started the veterans program at Citrus in
cool.
It was in early 2000. After the invasion of Afghanistan, I started the veterans program, and we desperately, when these people started coming back, these young veterans, and going to college, they needed help. I had one guy say, he said he was more frightened to go to college than he was when he was fighting in Fallujah in Iraq.
Wow.
Because he felt like he had more control there than he had, he felt like a fish out of water, because all these people that were kind of young like him had no way to connect with him, because he had this horrible experience in war. So
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's a very frightening thing for them. Some of them can make the adjustment, and so that's why a friend of mine who was a VA counselor therapist at the East LA Vet Center, a guy named Manuel Martinez, we became friends, and he came up with this idea, what he called Boots-to-Books, which is a transition program for vets coming back from the war.
Neat.
So we did that, and we were the first in the nation to offer that class, a credit class. And he said, basically what we're doing is boot camp for civilian life. Kind of like you got boot camp to go into the military. You need a boot camp.
That's so smart.
Oh, he's a brilliant guy. He's retired now, but literally, I get kind of emotional.
Well, that's okay. You're totally allowed.
Yeah, he has saved so many lives.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, sorry. Oh man.
You are not the only one to get emotional on this show, so it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably saved hundreds of people from suicide. So
that's amazing. And like, it takes such a good heart to put something like that together and help everybody, like I said, hundreds of other people. And if you're one of those people who are going through something, reach out to somebody. There are people out there that have got knowledge, that have got help, so reach out.
Yeah, and connecting all the dots here. There was a writing and mental health and all that. I made friends with a guy named Kevin Hines, and I'm not sure if you've ever encountered him. His last name Hines, and he is one of the few people who survived jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
Oh my goodness!
There's less than 1% who actually survived. Now he was severely injured, but now he dedicates his life to teaching people about how to what to do when you're in a crisis, and suicide prevention. That's what he does, and he's very, very good at it. And he inspired me to write a play called The Bridge, and it was about these two characters who show up on a bridge. Neither one's kind of like a middle-aged man who's a teacher, and the other one's this teenage girl, like 18, 19, and they're both there to commit suicide, but they don't know it. They just kind of chance encounter each other, and then they have this exchange, and they eventually figure out why they're both there, but they don't know right away. And the dialogue is kind of, because it shows the intergenerational problem. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. There are people that are doing this. So, and they end up saving each other. So it's kind of cool. Cool play.
Cool.
Yeah, it's called The Bridge. So it kind of ties all the things together, because that with veterans here in America, I know you're in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the situation is in Canada, but here in the United States, 22 American veterans commit suicide every day. That's the number. So
that is scary. That is a scary high. Like, I knew it was going to be a scary high number, but when you actually say the number out loud, I'm not sure. I know that, or how to word this properly. I know our mental health system in Canada is not very good. So I am assuming that even for the veterans, it's not that good.
Yeah, I couldn't say with authority. I can tell you this, that even really advanced, compassionate countries with, nationalized healthcare like Norway, which I know very well, they didn't have a very good program for their veterans with PTSD and suicide prevention, and of course they're very active in peacekeeping operations. That's usually what they do, and they had a really pretty big problem. So I made some connections there and helped some people and kind of got things rolling there, and so that was really good to do that. So but I haven't had any Canadian colleagues that I've worked with. It gives me an idea. Maybe I want to get Manny on it. He's retired now, so he has time. So maybe,
there you go. Perfect.
You've inspired me, Randi-lee. Maybe that would be something that would be worth looking into, because Canadians are involved in peacekeeping operations, all around the world. So
yeah, definitely.
Canadian military folks.
Yeah, we got to help each other out. So
yes, and we're just right across the border. We're neighbors. So
exactly, I know. And I'm like, where I live specifically, I'm super close to the border. We used to go over there just go over there for dinner or whatever. Like it's just like right there.
Yeah, up in Seattle, is pretty close to Canada, and we went to Canada all the time, and Canadians coming down, we're going up there, so into British Columbia, into Vancouver.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I'd be going into Buffalo.
Okay.
So way on the other side. Yeah. Okay, so what are some of the coping skills that you learned to help deal with your PTSD and depression?
Well, first of all, stop being stubborn and not asking for help, when you need it. And that's probably the most important thing. And of course, that's what makes it so tough for military people, because you're taught to not ask for help, that you're an army of one, right? This horrible, motto that they used to have, an army of one. And well, first of all, it doesn't even make sense in a military sense, the army of one.
No, that's
So, but for a mental health sense, definitely not. So being able to ask for help, and I think that's probably the most important. And then being willing to work, with the therapist, and if the one therapist doesn't work, try another one. Try different things. And I've had a lot of different approaches, different therapists and therapy programs, but probably the best one that I had was something called DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. And I really enjoyed it. And it tied in so nicely to my writing too, because as soon as I found out what DBT was, this idea of the wise mind, the emotion mind, and the logic mind, I said, oh, that's just like the original Star Trek, That's like Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy and Spock. Spock is the logic mind, Dr. McCoy is the emotion mind, and Captain Kirk is supposed to, be the wise mind that uses both of them to make a right command decision. And my therapist said, that's a good analogy. That's a pretty good analogy. And I said, well, that kind of works in, in writing too, with your character development. You have, it really does help. So, but personally it does, because then you can manage, your emotions. You can't obviously shut them off. That's not what you want to do with PTSD. It's, for me, the traumatic things, I was never in combat, so I can't say I was a combat veteran, and that's where my PTSD came from. But I did work in a prison before I was a helicopter pilot.
Okay.
I worked in a prison, and I saw some horrible things, terrible, horrible things, and just the idea of how you survive in a prison as a guard or a prisoner, but both. I used to say you're kind of a guard and a prisoner are locked into this like I used to call it a demented dance, where you both hate each other, but you're in these roles where you have to perform, and the prisoner has to be really tough. The guard has to be really tough. You can't show any emotions. And for instance, I also worked in a not just a military prison, but a maximum security state prison in Minnesota. And one of the first days I was there, I was put in the prison industry section where they were making these industrial aprons. And to make those aprons, they had these shears that were about, 14 inches long. And this prisoner came by, and by the way, it was a maximum security prison. So everybody was in there for murdering other prisoners. They're the worst of the worst.
Okay, so hold on. I have to wrap my head around this. So they're in there for murdering people. They're the worst of the worst, and you're giving them giant, sharp objects.
Yeah, who made that decision? Why don't you have them make little fuzzy objects or something, that doesn't require large, sharp objects,
Yeah, okay.
So it's just, I think somebody's got a very sick sense of humor or something. But so this guy comes by, and he's a mean looking dude. He's all tatted up. Not to say that tattoos are bad, but he just looks scary. And he comes by with these shears, and he has them, and he's walking by, and he's trying to say, he looks scary, but he says, "Oh, I hope you're having a nice day, officer." And he kind of runs the shears next to my chest and under my chin as he walks by. And as a guard, what you got to do is you just have to be stone faced, and just don't react. And I figure to this day, if I had reacted, I might be dead, because he's already in for multiple murders. This particular
what difference does it make at that point?
And there's no death penalty in Minnesota, so he's already in for life. So a lot of them just at that point they don't care.
Yep.
So I realized this is just sick. This is just, it's terrible for them. It's because they have to survive from each other, killing each other, and we have to survive. And so, this kind of traumatic stuff, I did some research on it, and I found out that prison guards have the same rate of PTSD as combat veterans. It's the same rate.
That. Yeah.
And there was, physical altercations too. And, where I got injured in a trying to do a cell extraction, which is to pull somebody out of one cell, put them in another. And that's a danger point right there, because this person just goes absolutely, they just want to hurt you and kill you.
Yeah.
And you're trying to subdue them. And the other one was a prison fire that I survived, where we were dragging prisoners. I just wrote about this the other day. I'd kind of locked it away. I hadn't thought about it in years. And then when I was writing about it, I had to relive the whole thing. And it's, wow, I got to use all my coping skills, realize that was in the past. I've dealt with this, but now I'm writing about it. And this is very therapeutic, writing about it. And I'm writing about it in a comic book form too, which makes it even more fun. But so, we had to drag these unconscious prisoners out of their cells because somebody had lit their mattress on fire. So it was filled with black smoke. So we're dragging these guys out of their cells. This one guy, this one prisoner comes to, and instead of thanking us for saving his life, he starts attacking my friend and then attacking me, and we have to subdue him. So he's trying to kill us, and we just saved his life. It just doesn't make any sense at all. It's like war in a sense. There's no sense to it. And
Yeah.
that was my last day working at that maximum security prison because I said, no, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna do this. This is not for me. And the funny thing is, prisoners, they sit around. It's not that they're not smart, because they're very smart. They're just kind of, a lot of them are very devious. They don't
Mhm.
have any rules, and except for prison rules, which are the opposite of our rules in civil society. But I had several prisoners come up to me and say, you know what, guard, you don't belong here. He said, yeah, this is not a good place for you to work. Because I like to talk to people, and I would tell them stories. They'd tell me stories, and they'd say, they'd like that I engaged with them.
Yeah.
But they said, you know what, I don't think you should be working in a place like this. They
Yeah.
were giving me advice, and they were right. They were right. I shouldn't be working in a place like that.
Yeah.
But it was experience that you can't get any other way than to immerse yourself into it. So
Mhm.
for writing, that's a deep well that I've been able to draw from.
Which is great in that sense.
Yeah, from a
Yeah.
writing perspective, it's good.
Yeah.
Mental health perspective, it was a challenge, and still is a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So tell us about what you've written and where people can pick it up.
Yeah, sure. I got all these academic books, and then I got the 4 paranormal books. I got 2 comic books that I published. All of this stuff is on Amazon, and also my website. You can see everything that I do, the music and the plays and everything. That's bruceolavsolheim.com. My middle name is Olav, Olav, Solheim, Solheim. So bruceolavsolheim.com. So everything I've done, all my creative stuff is on there.
Perfect.
And so that's how they can get a hold of me. And
Nice.
yeah,
And where do
I've
they
written,
follow you? Oh, sorry. You've written what?
No, that's okay. And then on Facebook, there's at Timeless Paranormal would be my paranormal site, where I link all the stuff I'm researching, and so it's kind of a fun thing. And so I've done everything from a history textbook, or I call it an anti-textbook because I don't like textbooks. And then the paranormal stuff, the comic books, and the comic books deal with the paranormal as well, and alien contact, which is a really fun subject to deal with.
Mhm.
What they call ufology.
Oh, I've never heard that word.
Yeah, ufology, UFOlogy. Yeah, ufology.
Yeah. I like that. I do.
Yeah.
I've never heard it, but I like it.
Yeah, it is cool. And it's just like the paranormal world. There's a lot of charlatans and people you got to watch out for, who don't have your best interests at heart. People charging you money, and all of a sudden, you're paying all this money and they're not doing anything for you. There's some of those folks in the ufology community too, but there are some gems to people, authentic people who just want to help. And that's what a psychic told me once I started to understand how to use this effectively and for my own health and welfare. She said, whatever you do with your psychic abilities, the number one rule is you always have to help.
I like that rule. That should just be a rule for everybody in life in general.
Yeah, you got to help. And yeah, exactly. It works. We should be helping each other all the time. Whether you have psychic abilities or you minimal, or you don't have it, or you don't think I think everybody does. That's just they don't realize it. That's what I've discovered.
Yeah, I love that. Excellent. So, any last words for the audience?
Yeah, the motto that my spirit friends give me, that every time I connect with them on my spirit walks, they tell me to keep love in my heart and always operate from a position of love.
Oh, I like that. That is very nice.
Easier said than done.
Oh yeah, big time. All right. So thank you again, Bruce, for coming on the show, sharing your life with us and some awesome tips.
Oh, thank you, Randi-lee.
So we have a sponsor for today's episode. It is Taylor Smith Design. And I have been using the services for, I guess, almost over a year now. I use the do-it-yourself services, and it makes posting on my social media so much easier. Seriously. They have a user-friendly platform where I can schedule all of my posts for the whole year. on multiple social sites at the same time. The best part about that is that I can create recurring posts, so I don't have to constantly redo the same thing, which works great when promoting my books. Plus, if you run multiple businesses like I do, since I'm my kid's momager, you can hook it up to multiple accounts. One price for all of your needs, and it saves me so much time. Depending on the level that you sign up for, it can do so much more than just that. I'm still trying to figure out some of the features that it offers. If you need an affordable solution for your social media needs, then go to getseensocial.ca, use code write or die to get your first month totally free. All right. Who doesn't like free? Remember, you want to go to getseensocial.ca and use the code write or die. Get that first month free. Again, thank you, Bruce, for being on the show. Always nice to chat with such a great variety of people. Check out his links. They're going to be down in the description below, so you can very easily click and get to his information. As well, if you want to support the channel, you can check out our merch store. 10% of the proceeds goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly.